Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. I hope you're well. So we're here with Sheikh Abdur. Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing? I'm doing good. So we're going to cover a really interesting topic today, and that is the problem of evil, as they call it, or coin it. But basically what they say is, well, if God exists and He's good, then why is there so much evil in the world? You know, why is there suffering? Why are people dying? Why are there disasters and wars and so on and so forth? So maybe if we take it away, go over this topic and just give us your take on this basically.
I think that the main point is that there's no real necessary correlation between there being suffering and there, not there being a God or not being a God, because usually the arguments that are put forward for the existence of God are based upon the fact that we live in a designed, organised, systemised universe. So whether there's suffering or not has got nothing to do with whether a creator, a designer exists.
Right.
So, I've heard so many... the example I often think of is that, look, if, for the sake of argument, all there was suffering on earth and there was nothing except suffering, varying degrees of suffering, and maybe some people... It's a very negative way of looking at life, and I think most people would not really agree that that's how life is, that most people experience a lot of joy and a lot of happiness in life.
Yeah.
And the suffering in life is actually a lot less than the joy and the happiness. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that all we did experience was suffering, then it wouldn't necessarily mean that there's no creator.
Yes.
For example, there was a movie, I don't know, but whether it's famous or not, I think it was called Saw. And in this movie, these people woke up in a room and they had an option of basically dying or sawing through their leg to escape. And then they go through a series of horrific tests, and each one means they have to subject themselves or someone else to something pretty horrific in order to escape something more horrific. So they were presented with these choices. Now, anyone waking up in this environment would not presume that this was some random event and they just happened to be, find themselves in some... They would realise that someone had constructed this in order to put them through some series of tests, which is exactly what it was. Now, my point being here is that it just shows there's no correlation whatsoever between the existence of suffering and there being a God or not being a God.
Sure. So what you're saying is it's two different things. You can't conflate the two.
You can't conflate the two.
It doesn't negate God's existence.
No. Obviously, to be fair to those people who put forward the argument, they say, how is suffering compatible with the existence of a loving, caring, merciful, compassionate God? But even that is not an argument, okay? Because any parent knows that you have to and you do subject your children to many difficulties and many hardships in order to make them successful at something. And that seems to be the way the human beings are actually built.
Yes.
Right. This just seems to be the way we are. This is the way we are created. And the fact and the paradox actually is, if you look at the science of the psychology of happiness, is that human beings are actually most happy when they are when they are going through a difficult experience.
That's interesting.
But it has some conditions, right? It's not just they go through a difficult experience and they're happy. But basically, when you are struggling to the very limit of your capability in order to achieve a specific defined objective, right? And it shouldn't be too hard and it shouldn't be too easy, right? So when you are in that situation, this is what they call optimal experience. This is when actually, strangely enough, paradoxically, human beings experience the most profound sense of happiness. But I'm saying happiness in a deep level, because people, when they go through that, they experience a sense of satisfaction, of completeness. Why? Because fundamentally they've improved themselves, In other words, they feel they've become better because of that experience. And secondly, they feel they've contributed to the betterment of humanity.
Right.
Yeah. So these are the two conditions, right? So if you think about suffering, right? If you think about suffering, then it depends really, doesn't it, upon your attitude. It depends on your attitude towards what's happening. So if we live in this building and this whole building collapses,
yes.
right? You know, I may say, oh, it's that my home has fallen down, you know, that's it, it's my end of my life, oh, that's it. And I fall into despair and commit suicide,
yeah.
right? But you react totally differently. You start pulling my kids out of the rubble, you save my family, you know, and for you, it's a positive experience. You've improved yourself as a human being, right? You've helped other human beings,
yep.
and and maybe it's brought you maybe closer to God, right?
So what you're saying in some respects is, that's very interesting, because what you're saying is sometimes when a test befalls you, or a calamity strikes, sometimes it's a test for you to see what are you going to do in that situation. Are you going to sit there and complain or do something about it?
Exactly, that's absolutely right. And also, it's subjective.
Right.
It's a subjective experience. This is why the exact same event could be like a punishment for one person, and it could be a test, or let's even say for another person, it could be a totally positive, life-enhancing experience.
Right.
Same event, but for two different people, a totally different outcome. So what is interesting here is that, well, I mean, it does beg the question: what is suffering anyway? What do we mean when something is evil or something bad happened to somebody?
Yep.
Right.
That's the first question.
What is it? What do you even mean by that?
Yeah.
Right. Because, you know, my attitude, and this is an attitude that I get from Islam, this is an attitude that I get from what Islam teaches me, is that I try, and I hopefully I do look at nearly everything that happens to me in my life as something positive, because I truly believe, and I really do believe, that everything that happens to me is for a good reason. It is for the best, because I have a good opinion about Allah. And I believe that whatever Allah is going to subject me to is for my benefit, even if I don't understand it right now. But that is confirmed for me by my life experience, because when I first became Muslim, there were so many things that used to confuse me, like, oh Allah, why is this happening? I don't understand, you know, I'm so confused. But then I would say, but you know what, I trust you. I trust you, God. I believe that Allah, whatever you're putting me through, there's a reason for it. And I know I'll understand one day. And you know what? I did exactly that.
Makes sense.
You know, it may take 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. But
don't jump to conclusions from your ignorance, basically. Because as human beings, we're ignorant almost always. And we learn as we progress through life.
Absolutely.
And then you can appreciate certain things later on in life that you couldn't at a particular point.
And I go back to parenting, right? That's the same thing you hope about your kids, right? You know, often parents say to the kids, you don't appreciate it now, but one day you'll appreciate what I did for you.
Makes sense. Okay, Zakir, I think that covers that really well. Just as a concluding note, if there's any sort of piece of advice you can give to someone, say, that's watching and maybe struggling with this question, what would you say to them?
Honestly, my best advice is you need to have a connection with the Quran, because constantly reading the Quran and trying to understand it, you will find this is God, this is the Creator talking to you. And you're going to find your answers there. You're going to find, you know, God, it's better than me or you talking to whoever it is, right? Why not let Allah talk to you Himself? Let Him say to you, and you will find that if you approach the Quran with the right attitude, it will speak to you.
That was really beneficial, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.